Hello children, welcome to our numerals lesson today. This lesson was produced by Rwanda Education Board with support from UNICEF. My name is Teacher John. This lesson is for Primary 5 Mathematics, still with Unit 4. For practice exercises, you can still refer to page 59. Dear adults, we still encourage you to support the children during this radio learning program. In this lesson, children, you still need a notebook and a pen. Friends, let us review what we learned in the previous lesson. In the previous lesson, we learned about equivalent fractions. We learned that equivalent fractions have the same value even though they might look different. Dear friends, I hope you did your homework. Let us check some of the answers. I asked you to find the equivalent fractions as much as you can for a quarter. That is 1/4. I repeat, I asked you to find the equivalent fractions for a quarter. That is 1/4. The equivalent fractions for 1/4 are 2/8, 3/12, 4/16, 5/20, and so on. I hope you followed the procedure. I also asked you to find equivalent fractions for 6/7 as much as you can. Let's check some of the equivalent fractions. The equivalent fractions of 6/7 are 12/14, 18/21, 24/28, and so on. I repeat, the equivalent fractions of 6/7 are 12/14, 18/21, 24/28, and so on. Dear friends, and in today's lesson, we will learn more about calculating equivalent fractions with a given denominator. I repeat, with a given denominator. In today's lesson, we will learn more about calculating equivalent fractions with a given denominator. But first, let us have a short break. We will be back.
Come along and play with us.
Welcome back, dear children. Like I said before the break, in today's lesson, we will learn more about equivalent fractions. But this time round, we will calculate equivalent fraction given a certain denominator. We will calculate an equivalent fraction of a given denominator. But first, we will have our warm-up for fractions. We will sing the same chant we sang in the previous lesson. You'll still stand up and shake the way you wish. I know you now mastered it. You know our chant, right? Are you ready, children? Let's go. Fractions, fractions, parts of a whole. They are equal pieces like parts of a bread. Half a bread, half a biscuit. A half is a half, big or small. It takes 2 halves to make 1 whole. Fractions, fractions, parts of a whole. Well done, children. Let's do it one more time. Are you ready? Let's go. Fractions, fractions, parts of a whole. They are equal pieces like parts of a bread. Fractions, fractions, parts of a whole. They are equal pieces like parts of a bread. Half a bread, half a biscuit. A half is a half, big or small. It takes 2 halves to make 1 whole. Fractions, fractions, parts of a whole. Well done, friends. Children, let us remind ourselves about equivalent fractions. What did we say they are? Perfect. Equivalent fractions are fractions that look different but have the same value. Equivalent fractions are fractions that look different but have the same value. We already know that to calculate equivalent fractions, we multiply both the numerator and the denominator with the same whole number. In today's lesson, it's a little bit different. We will calculate for equivalent fractions whose denominators are given. We will calculate for equivalent fractions of given denominators. In this case, if the denominator is given, we will first divide to get the multiplying whole number. We will first divide the denominators to get the multiplying whole number. We will then multiply the whole number with the numerator to get our new numerator. Isn't that interesting, children? I know it is interesting. We will have some examples after this short break.
Come along and play with us.
Welcome back, children. Let us have some examples. Example 1. Find the equivalent fraction for 1 over 5 with the denominator 30. Find the equivalent fraction for the fraction 1 over 5 with the denominator 30. Friends, what do we do first? Perfect. Let us first restate the problem. 1 over 5 has a denominator 5, right? And we have to find an equivalent fraction with the denominator 30. So friends, like I said before the break, we find the whole number used to multiply the fraction 1 over 5. We find it by dividing our denominators. 30 divided by 5. 30 divided by 5, we get 6. 6 is the multiplying factor. 6 is the multiplying factor. Therefore, we multiply 6 with our numerator 1. We multiply 6 with our numerator 1. 6 times 1, we get 6. Remember, our denominator is 30. Therefore, the equivalent fraction with the denominator 30 is 6 over 30. Therefore, the equivalent fraction of 1 over 5 with the denominator 30 is 6 over 30. Thank you for listening, dear children. Now, dear friends, we are going to have a second example. Listen attentively. Write down the steps because you will need them in our next activities. Dear friends, find the equivalent fraction with the denominator 60 for the fraction 3 over 4. Dear children, let us find the equivalent fraction with the denominator 60 for the fraction 3 over 4. Friends, let us restate our problem. We have a fraction 3 over 4. It has a denominator 4. And we have to find an equivalent fraction with the denominator 60. Dear friends, in order to get our multiplying factor, we divide the denominators. And therefore, we have to divide 60 or divided by 4. What do we get, friends? 60 divided by 4. We get 15. 15 is our multiplying factor. Therefore, we multiply 15 with our numerator 3 to get the numerator of our equivalent fraction. What do we do, friends? Therefore, we multiply our multiplying factor 15 with our numerator 3 to get our new numerator for the equivalent fraction. Therefore, friends, 15 times 3, what do we get? 15 times 3, we get 45. Therefore, 45 is our numerator for the equivalent fraction. Remember, our equivalent fraction has a denominator 60. That gives us our answer as 45 over 60. The equivalent fraction of 3 over 4, which has a denominator 60, is 45 over 60. Well done, friends. Now, friends, let us have a break. We'll be back shortly. Be ready to try out some activities on your own.
Come along and play with us.
Welcome back, children. Dear children, can you try this out on your own? Find the equivalent fraction with the denominator 48 of the fraction 1 over 8. Find the equivalent fraction with the denominator 48 of the fraction 1 over 8. You have few seconds to do so. Well done, friends. I hope you have finished. Let us check our answer. First, you had to restate the problem. Let us restate our problem. We have a fraction 1 over 8, and it has a denominator 8. We have to find an equivalent fraction with the denominator 48. What does that mean, friends? We need to first find the multiplying factor. The multiplying factor that they used to get the denominator 48. Therefore, we divide our denominators. 48 divided by 8, we get 6. 6 is our multiplying factor. What do we do with the 6, friends? Yes, perfect. We multiply 6 with our numerator 1. 6 times 1, we get 6. That means our equivalent fraction has numerator 6. Therefore, our new equivalent fraction for the fraction 1 over 8 that has a denominator 48 is 6 over 48. The equivalent fraction of 1 over 8 that has a denominator 48 is 6 over 48. Well done, friends. I know you're progressing well. Now, friends, let us review what we have learned today. What have you learned today, dear children? Perfect. We have learned about equivalent fractions. We have learned how to calculate for an equivalent fraction given a denominator. I repeat, we have learned how to calculate for an equivalent fraction given a denominator. To calculate the equivalent fraction given the denominator, we first get the multiplying whole number or the multiplying factor by dividing the given denominator and the denominator of the original fraction. When we get the multiplying factor, we multiply it with the numerator of the original fraction. That gives us the new numerator of our equivalent fraction. I repeat, to calculate the equivalent fraction given a denominator, we first get the multiplying factor by dividing both the denominator of the original fraction and the denominator of the new equivalent fraction. When we get the multiplying factor, we multiply it with the numerator of the original fraction. That gives us a new numerator of an equivalent fraction given its denominator. Now friends, for your homework, find the equivalent fraction with the denominator 30 for the fractions 2 over 3 and 4 over 5. You have the fractions 2 over 3 and 4 over 5. Find the equivalent fractions of each whose denominator is 30. Find the equivalent fractions of each of the fractions 2 over 3 and 4 over 5 whose denominator is 30. I repeat, for your homework, find the equivalent fraction with the denominator 30 for the fractions 2 over 3 and 4 over 5. You have the fractions 2 over 3 and 4 over 5. Find the equivalent fractions of each whose denominator is 30. Find the equivalent fractions of each of the fractions 2 over 3 and 4 over 5 whose denominator is 30. That is it for today. Thank you for participating. Remember to join us for our next numerous lesson. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, 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 teacher. Goodbye, children. See